Hey everyone, I want to do a short video on something related to events in Israel, and it's a phrase that you'll hear in a lot of rallies, especially on college campuses and cities, where people are rallying in favor of the Palestinians. And they will say from the river to the sea, and then they say Palestine will be free. So what does that mean, and is it anti-Semitic? So first of all, let's just do the most basic. What's the river and what's the sea, right? So we're talking about the Jordan River here, right, and the Mediterranean Sea. So, what does all this mean? When I teach history, I talk about understanding biases. And if I bring you sources from Israel, and Israeli sources say, Hamas wants to eliminate every Jew in Israel, you would say, well, that's bias. That's an Israeli source. If you read a Palestinian source and they say Israel wants to commit genocide against all the Palestinians, that's bias because it's a Palestinian source. So you have to actually look at what each side says of them for themselves. So, for example, when you look at sources from Israel, are there any sources from Israel that call for a genocide of the people in Palestine? Absolutely not. Obviously, there's going to be exceptions to everything. You're going to get a few crazy people everywhere, but absolutely not. And in fact, the whole accusation of genocide against Israel is really a bit of a blood libel, because if you think about it, the population of the Palestinians has gone exponentially higher in the last 10, 20 years. That's not how genocides work, right? When you have a genocide, you have less people, not more people. So that's one very important point. So accusing people of a genocide when it's not happening is a form of blood libel. Now, on the other hand, when you look at Palestinians chanting from the river to the sea, what they are literally saying is all the Jewish people who live in this entire area, so we're not just talking about the West Bank and Gaza, the entire area of modern Israel need to be no longer in that area. Now, does that mean they want to kill them all? Well, some people say that directly, some don't. Does it mean they just want them all exiled out of the area? Again, can you try to imagine them telling 8 million Jews whose homeland, indigenous land, you're gone? So it's very hard not to look at that statement and not see it as an anti-Semitic statement. Now, does this mean that people who say, I want the Palestinians to have a state are anti-Semitic? Absolutely not. You could say, I want the Palestinians to have a state and not be anti-Semitic. But when you call for the destruction of the state of Israel in the process and saying that the Jewish people have no right to the land at all, that's a problem, right? That does have very much connotations of anti-Semitism. And in fact, this is such a serious issue that many European countries, I've seen in the news, and the time I'm recording this is November of 2023, that because this chant is often also associated with calls of violence and death to Jews, that some European communities and cities have actually said, this doesn't fall under free speech because you're actually using this phrase to attack the Jewish people. I read a report in Vienna the other day, a news report about that, and the vice chancellor of Germany made a speech kind of similarly touching on some of these ideas. Important to understand the term, what it means, and understand why in many ways it is a term that is anti-Semitic. Again, calling for a state for the Palestinians is not. Calling for the eliminations of the state of Israel is, right? So I think it's very simple in that way. Anyways, I hope you found that informative, something you could share with others who may not be clear. Most people don't even know what that phrase means. They just hear it and they go, oh yeah, and they don't even know what they're saying. So, know what you're saying before you say it. All right, everyone, have a good day.